Supposed to be as far as, oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Beaumont City Council regular council meeting for Tuesday, May 14th already, 2024, here at 5:02 or 5:03 p.m. I will call the meeting to order. We begin with the land acknowledgement as we always do. The city of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether it be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. Next on our agenda is, as we always do, proclamations. And I have 3 this evening. Oh, it was 5 last week. I only got 3 today. So first proclamation is Family Doctor Day, May 19th, 2024. Whereas my fellow citizens trust and rely on their family doctors to provide healthcare that is both timely and of the highest quality. And whereas recognize and appreciate that 80% of healthcare in Alberta is delivered in the communities by family doctors and primary healthcare providers. And whereas the foundation of an effective healthcare system for Alberta starts with strong primary healthcare. And whereas Family Doctor Day provides an opportunity to celebrate and acknowledge the central role family doctors have in the delivery of personal, comprehensive, and continuing healthcare for people throughout their lives. And whereas Family Doctor Day also presents the opportunity for governments, healthcare organizations, and other professionals and patients to recognize the vital role family doctors have. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danyluk, do hereby proclaim May 19th, 2024 as Family Doctor Day in the City of Beaumont, dated 14th of May, 2024. 1 second, pardon me. National Public Works Week, May 19th to 25th, 2024. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Beaumont. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees of all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, other structures, and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for all citizens and civic leaders and children in Beaumont to gain knowledge of and to maintain ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their community. And whereas the year 2024 marks the 64th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, be resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danyluk, do hereby proclaim May 19th to 25th, 2024 as National Public Works Week in the City of Beaumont, dated 14th of May, 2024. And lastly, Community Disability Services Professional Appreciation Week, May 20th to 26th, 2024. Whereas pursuant to Section 3(1)B of the Special Days Act, a minister may declare a week as a special week and name it accordingly. If the week is not otherwise recognized, declared, or observed by any other municipality or enactment. Whereas over 15,000 people are employed in the community disability service sector in the province of Alberta. And whereas having a disability is often isolating for individuals, it is crucial we support this sector and its employees to make sure every Albertan is given the opportunity to live rich, meaningful lives in their community through access to services. And whereas disability services workers are valued for the positive impact their work has on lives of people with disabilities and their families. And whereas the province of Alberta recognizes the important work of the Alberta Disability Workers Association for its advocacy and raising awareness among Albertans of this essential workforce. Now, therefore, be resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danyluk, do hereby proclaim May 20th to 26th, 2024 as Community Disability Services Professional Appreciation Week in the City of Beaumont, dated 14th of May, 2024. Next on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Madam Clerk, any changes to our agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. There is no additions or deletions to the agenda this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for a motion from the member of the council to adopt the agenda as presented in a moment here. Councilor McCook, would you make the motion, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the May 14th, 2024 council agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion on the motion, members of council? Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion to adopt the agenda. That carries unanimously 6-0. I believe Councillor Penrod is on his way this evening to join us, so he'll be here as soon as he possibly can. And we'll welcome him at that time. Next on our agenda is open forum. Madam Clerk, any open forum guests this evening for council? Oh, hang on. Your mic is on now.
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any registrations for open forum this evening.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please review the consent agenda for us, please? Actually, before you start, I see Councillor Penrod walking in. Let's wait a half a second to let him hear the consent agenda in case he has any concerns. Thank you, Councillor Penrod. You're welcome. Just about to review the consent agenda, so I wanted to wait for you. Just take a second and consent agenda will be read through momentarily here. Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, Mayor.
Yeah, when you're ready. Yes, thanks.
That council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5.1, the regular council meeting minutes of April 23rd. Council accept the meetings of the April 23rd, 2024 regular council meeting as presented. Item 7.4, the short-term implementation of the urban agriculture plan. The May 14th, 2024 short-term implementation of the urban agriculture plan report be received for information. Item 7.5, the draft council policy on addressing municipal complaints. The council policy on addressing municipal complaints as set out in attachment 1 be approved. Item 7.7, the 2023 annual report to the community, that the May 14th, 2024-2023 report to the community report be received for information. Item 8.1, bylaw 1054-24, operating line of credit borrowing bylaw, first, second, and third reading. That bylaw 105424, operating line of credit borrowing bylaw be given first reading. That bylaw 1054-24 be given second reading. That bylaw 1054-24 be considered for third reading, and that bylaw 1054-24 be given third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Discussion on the consent agenda. Any changes from members of council? Seeing none. Thank you, council. I'll ask you to vote on the consent agenda as presented. Oh, Councillor Penrod, I haven't got you signed in, so are you voting? Did I miss the motion? I thought oh, hang on. Okay, thank you. We'll stop the vote. We haven't official yet. I'll ask for motion to adopt the consent agenda. Councillor Barnhart. Got you there.
Thank you. I'm pleased to make the motion as presented for the consent agenda.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. All right, council, let's try this one more time. Please vote on the consent agenda. Councillor Penrod, how do you vote? Thank you. That carries unanimously. 7-0. Thank you, council. Appreciate that. Madam Clerk, can I do the re-sign-in again to get Councillor Penrod able to vote electronically? So I'll just do the sign-in one more time, everybody, if you could, please. Sam? Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we're all in. Good. Okay. Next on our agenda is item 6.1, public hearings on bylaw 1048-24, outline plan, and bylaw 1049-24. The public hearing. I think, Madam Clerk, we have a change on this public hearing this evening. You put the motion on the screen.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have a motion drafted for council's consideration this evening. We did have a request from the applicant to postpone the public hearing this evening.
Thank you. Is that really small? Okay. Can we make it just a little bit bigger?
Yeah.
Thanks. I thought it was just me, but it looks really small.
Just testing your eyes.
Okay. Thanks. I'll make the motion then that the scheduled May 14th, 2024 public hearing for bylaw 1048-24 municipal development plan, Place Charleroux outline plan amendment, non-statutory public hearing, and bylaw 1049-24 Place Charleroux land use bylaw amending bylaw be postponed to end of third quarter 2024, and that administration re-advertise the public hearing in accordance with the Municipal Government Act. Thank you, Madam Clerk. As Madam Clerk mentioned, the applicant did request a delay. So this motion will address that request, and we'll do all the appropriate public hearing and advertising to make sure the public has a chance to come and listen to that debate and participate in the public hearing at a later time. Hopefully before the end of the third quarter, but it'll depend on a few variables. So with that, I'll open the floor any discussion on the motion. Councilor Natalabas.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question to administration as to what's considered an acceptable reason to request either a change or postponement to something along these lines. I guess I'm speaking in more general terms as to what we would accept as a whole for anyone to request a postponement.
Which microphone do you want to use there? I'll get it on for you. Microphone is on. Ms. Raymond.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, we're a shortage of microphones around here. Hopefully that'll be fixed soon. Through to Councillor Natellenbos, a reasonable request was received from the applicant. As a matter of course, through the subdivision process, they did receive some comments that they have to address, and they want to have time to be able to go through those and determine if the project is still feasible or not.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. Councilor Telebas, a follow-up?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Just looking for a little more clarity as to what, so for this circumstance, that's great, but just as a general whole, just so that the general public is aware as to what we would consider as a reasonable request. Are there a few areas or circumstances that we consider as acceptable or reasonable?
Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. Through the chair. A reasonable request on that would be anytime that the applicant does request these, we're bringing it forward at their request to be able to accommodate their, I guess, anticipated development that they're wishing to proceed with. If they don't want to have the land rezoned, then that is their right to not have the rezoning continue at this time and to be able to postpone that. So anytime that they do request that, we would honor that request.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Appreciate that. Any further questions on the motion? See none. Members of Council, would you please vote on the motion before you? And that carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Council. Next on our agenda this evening is item 7.1, Arts Grant Funding Recommendations, April 2024. Ms. Mancher, I believe you'll be presenting this evening, along with Ms. Vera. Let me just get your microphone on. It's on now. Whenever you're ready, please begin.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Joanna Mancher. I'm here as the team lead arts and events. It's my pleasure to be here this evening with Sherry Vera, the vice chair of the Arts Advisory Committee, to bring before council the arts grant funding recommendations for the April 2024 intake. As outlined in the report, this is the first intake of the arts grant for 2024 under the newly adopted Council Policy C-52 Municipal Grant Funding Program. This funding stream supports artistic and cultural endeavors by artists, arts organizations, and supports the delivery of arts initiatives that benefit the broader community of Beaumont. The grant also supports a variety of applicant types, including individual artists, ad hoc groups of artists, and arts nonprofit organizations. There are 2 intakes per year, as already mentioned. The program is competitive and eligibility does not guarantee funding. The arts grant stream for 2024 has a total of $100,000 available to be awarded. The Arts Advisory Committee is established as a council of committee, and in its mandate, it has the mandate to review the arts grants applications and to recommend allocations to council. The applications are first screened by administration for completeness and eligibility compliance. Applications are then circulated to members of the committee. They perform a review, initially individual review, and then come together as a committee for further discussion and final recommendations. Administration facilitates this, and I'm happy to share that administration received 4 eligible applications by the deadline for a total request of funding of $48,075. It's my pleasure to turn the floor over to Vice Chair.
Ms. Vera, welcome.
Good evening, Council. It's my pleasure to be here on behalf of the newly stood up Arts Advisory Committee. The committee went through its first go of assessing the applications. I can tell you that the members of this committee took this very seriously. We all worked diligently on reviewing the applications individually and then came together for about 2 hours to review our individual findings and had a really good, robust conversation that led to me being able to share with you our recommendations. The Arts Advisory Committee is pleased to recommend to Council funding of 3 projects. First is funding the Artists Association of Beaumont and their project called Arts Connects. This not-for-profit has been active since 1987, and supporting this project will help this group advance their mission to support and empower visual artists of Beaumont and to provide opportunities for Beaumont residents to enjoy and access visual arts. Funding would support weekly art meetups for local artists, monthly art education workshops, and renting appropriate studio space for these initiatives. Arts Connects will help foster artist-to-artist connections and learning and ultimately lead to a stronger, more collaborative visual arts community. The next project that we are recommending funding for is for the newly formed not-for-profit organization, the Beaumont Songbirds Choir, and their winter and spring 2024 programming. This community choir program fosters musical harmony across generations with 2 children's choirs, a youth choir, an adult choir, and a newly formed seniors choir, and special classes for babies and parents. These grant funds that we are recommending will support program supplies, facility rental, and specialized choral and musical personnel to help support the group's plan for growth and development. And the third request that we are recommending funding for this evening is for an impressive individual artist in our community, Bianca Aceves Jeffrey, with the grant funding being used to offset a small portion of her costs to participate in a 2-year Royal Winnipeg Ballet aspirant program. Bianca is an accomplished dancer with a long history of dancing in Beaumont with the Beaumont Society School of Dance. She is currently attending the Royal Winnipeg Ballet School Professional Division Level 7. The grant funds we have recommended you support will support her advanced level classical ballet training in the Aspirant program, which is the final step in her training before Bianca pursues her career as a professional ballerina. So those are the 3 grants that we are recommending you support. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for your presentation and detailed information. Very helpful. With that, open up the questions from members of the council before I ask for a motion, and then we'll discuss the motion. Councillor Penrod, followed by Councillor McCook.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk, and just take the opportunity to apologize for coming in late tonight. Thanks for accommodating me. I look forward to the day when we can invite Ms. Aceves Jeffrey back to dance on the stage of our new arts center. We got some work to do to get there, but it's a good vision to hold up. Because this is a new iteration of a program that's been running for a few years, just have some process questions for you. So I'll direct them through Ms. Mancher to administration. I believe we had 4 eligible and maybe 6 total applications to the program. Just wondering how that compares to the amount of applications we've had in the past.
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Penrod. It is down slightly, but I am pleased to report that we've had a couple of repeat applications as well as some new applications from new applicants entirely.
Okay, so then in your opinion, is there some work we could do to advertise or promote this better? Or is this just maybe a one-off as far as who was able to apply this time around?
Excellent question. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, the promotion of the opportunity was done in a variety of methods. Recognizing this is the first iteration through the new program, so administration will endeavor to ensure that we continue to advertise as widely as possible to ensure we're reaching all possible applicants.
Thank you. And I won't speak for any of my colleagues, but I'd love to help with that process. So
Wonderful.
again, we're doing this in a slightly different way, but we want to see it succeed. So I did notice there were two applications that were rendered in or decided to be ineligible, and just a process question around who have we communicated with those affected parties to clarify parameters of the program, and maybe I don't want to get way into the weeds on why. I know that we have standards and protocols and people need to follow those. I just would hope that folks wouldn't be disqualified on a technicality without at least some encouragement to kind of rejig their application and resubmit at the next intake.
Certainly. Thank you for the comment and question. Yes, indeed, we've been in touch with all applicants throughout the process. And once the decisions are finalized this evening, there will be further communication with all applicants, as well as opportunity and offers to have discussions about each application.
Okay, thank you so much. And to Ms. Vera and to the committee, thank you for your work. I sat on the other grant advisory committee, and I know people put a lot of time and effort and thought into those decisions. So I just want to say thanks for doing that work on our behalf.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cook, you have the floor.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, Councillor Penrod, thank you so much for all the work that you guys do. It's always impressive and always exciting to see which groups come forward and what kind of projects are coming forward in our city as well. I'm sure you guys probably are doing this, but I just wanted to confirm, are we tracking from one year to the next the total amounts that are being requested just from a data perspective? So when we come back at budget time and whatnot, we can kind of see through the years the growth and if we are getting more and more requests.
Excellent question. Thank you through the mayor to Councillor McCook. Yes, we are definitely tracking all of that information and we'll make that available at budget time.
At budget time? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh, Councillor Barnard, you have a quick question?
Quick one.
Yep.
Thank you. I just wanted to add as the council rep that sits on the committee, that not only are the volunteers working very hard and long hours and believe me, doing their homework, very impressive how much they read and are prepared for the meetings, puts me to shame sometimes. So I'm really pleased to see that. But I also want to say that the staff are really putting in a lot of effort. I don't think committees can be successful at this kind of work without that kind of support. So I really do appreciate it. And I wanted to say that publicly. So thank you very much, Ms. Mancher, and the other staff as well. Karen has been very helpful with us, as has Paul. So we've had lots of support and it's been very, very much appreciated. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, many members of council, I will also echo my thanks on behalf of council, the work the committee does. Very important work, this grants program, and it takes a lot of time and effort to do a good job in the committee, and your efforts are not unnoticed and very much appreciated. So thank you for your work. With that, I'll ask for the motion to be put on the screen. Member of council willing to make the motion on the funding recommendations. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Very pleased to make the motion that the funding allocations as set out in attachment 1 of the May 14th, 2024 report, Arts Advisory Committee recommendations, April 2024, be approved.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you speak to the motion or you're good? Okay, thank you. Discussion, members of council on the motion. Seeing none, Councillor, would you please, oh, Ms. Mantry?
Point of clarification, I believe the title of the report is incorrect.
Sorry. Arts grant funding recommendations. Sorry, what are you?
Instead of report, comma, Arts Advisory Committee recommendations, it should read Arts Grant Funding Recommendations, April 2024 intake.
Oh,
In the
in the
motion
motion
itself.
itself, yeah, okay. Would you get that fixed? Thank you. Yeah, it is. Okay, I don't think we need to reread the motion. I don't think we made it just a wordsmith there. Oh, hang on, we'll just wait for Madam Clerk to make sure we got the right motion correct. Just bear with us for a moment. Just make sure it's correct here. Looks correct, I believe. Ms. Madam Chair, you're good? What you observed?
Almost, almost.
Okay. We're good? Maybe one more time, Councilor Barnhart, would you mind just reading it again, just one more time, please? Hang on a second. Your mic is back on.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the funding allocations as set out in attachment 1 of the May 14th, 2024 report, Arts Grant Funding Recommendations, April 2024, be approved.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion on the motion, seeing none from before, I'm assuming we're good. Council, would you please vote on the motion before you? And that carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Council. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate your being this evening to talk to us. Much appreciated. Next on our agenda is 7.2. However, 7.3 trail lighting study has a 5:30 approximate start. We have guest presenters for that. So we're going to jump ahead to 7.3 trail lighting study. Mr. Chartrand, I believe you're presenting this evening. Then we'll come back to 7.2. Mr. Chartrand, welcome back, and your microphone is on, ready to go when you're ready, okay? You just pull the microphone a little closer, it gets a little bit, it's easier when it's a little closer,
that
it helps
better?
a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, council. My name is Corey Chartrand, and I am the manager of municipal projects within the infrastructure branch. I'm joined tonight by Daniel Zegalar and David Mason from ISL Engineering. In 2022, council approved funds to develop a trail lighting program for the city of Beaumont. We have provided council with the report outlining what a trail lighting program would look like, following a staged approach and using industry best practices. Daniel will now go through a short PowerPoint presentation with study highlights, and we're ready for any questions following the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. As Corey said, I am Dan Zego. I was the project manager for this, and I'm here with David Mason, the technical lead and author of the report. Abhishek Garg, who is with ISL as well, is our electrical lead. He's not available today for the presentation. Next slide, please. So what is trail lighting? So trail lighting is lighting of, for the folks of this study, is lighting of off-street trails and pathways, but there are no mandatory requirements for their installation, as this is up to the local decision-making process. Trail lighting can improve the perception of safety on trails, comfort for trail users to make it more attractive. It can improve mental health by allowing trails to be used in the dark seasons. It can light up multiple users to help reduce conflicts, and can reduce crime by lighting up unlit and concealed areas. When deciding to light a trail, there are multiple considerations shown on the screen, including its impact on wildlife and the nature, whether there could be implications on lighting pollution to existing development, the cost for construction and operations and maintenance, and how to decide when and where to light, because there's no standardized engineering methods at this point to decide whether to light or not of the off-street trail system. There are for roadways, but not for off-street trails. So the project originated in 2022 from a council motion to conduct a lighting assessment to develop a lighting program. Beaumont administration hired ISL to conduct an engineering study to evaluate and apply the criteria for prioritizing where to light and to provide budgetary cost estimates. The project started last fall and continued through this past winter. Our approach to prioritizing lighting includes developing a multi-design criteria using some of the technical guidelines that are available, including the Transportation Association of Canada Guide for Roadway Lighting and the RP 43 technical standards for lighting design. We developed criteria in collaboration with administration and split the city's trail system into several logical segments for review. The criteria applied to each segment is shown on the screen, including usage levels, so defined by how busy the trail is based on our usage counts I will go through in the next couple slides. Nearby activity generators, so if there's places where people are gathering in all seasons, whether the segment of the trail was placed in an important and connected piece of the network, where there's a need for improved security because of areas that could be perceived as more concealed, whether the trail was close to other other roadway lighting, and whether there's winter amenities included on the trail or near to the trail. So I'll quickly go over one of the first of these, and that is the usage levels. So in fall of 2023, ISL completed 20 trail counts to represent a sample of the usage levels of the trail system. We collected those counts from 6 to 8 when the trails are the busiest on within the same week, and when the weather was warm and dry. This information was used to establish a baseline of the trail usage and to gauge desirability for all seasons of use. Yep, sorry. And to supplement this data, we also pulled this information from Strava. Strava is a social media platform for activity tracking. It's used by many users in North America and one of the most popular out there. If you're familiar with it, you understand what it is. In the dark white, it shows us where the more activities are, and the darker yellow or orange is where the lesser activities are. So it just gives us a sense of how busy the trails are and gave us something to compare our actual counts to, because we didn't have the time or effort to complete trail counts on every trail in the whole city. Next slide. So this is the result of our study after applying the criteria that I've gone through. I won't go over each segment, because if there are questions at the end of this presentation, we can go through them in more detail. But the highlights shown on the slide are in yellow. You can see the trails that are given a higher level of prioritization, and in blue, those are the lower level of prioritization. The dots show what red, yellow, or blue, and that indicates the levels of usage based on our actual counts of people and either walking or cycling on the trail. So, and then after we completed the prioritization study to understand which segments of the trail network require the higher level of prioritization, we moved on to understand or to develop the budgetary cost estimates. So this slide just is an overview of the design considerations used to develop the budgetary cost estimates, and those are as follows. The 12 lux, which is an engineering term for illumination levels, was used because it represents an average for most trails. 30-meter spacing between lights, and power supply was either direct power or solar power. And we use the average cost of either of those. And on the right, you can see just some examples of what could be applied, but the exact design would be dependent on the location of the trail at the time. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this is an example showing an approximate 30-meter spacing with an overhead luminaire. This trail is located more in an isolated location where there's less development around it, so there might be a different design choice made if it was nearer to a development. And keeping in mind that these design considerations were created just for the budgetary assignments for each of the trail segments. Next slide, please. So this is our proposed capital asset or capital construction plan based on our the results of our prioritization study. We developed the capital plan based on an average budgetary amount of $125,000 per year, which allows the city to build approximately 11 kilometers total over 10 years, or about 1.1 kilometers per year, which is equal to 1.2 trail segments that are in our study. If you want to go through the details of our study and look at the trail segments individually. This is our proposed plan, keeping in mind that local conditions and feedback received can be accounted for in actually implementing these projects. And last slide, please. So in conclusion, went over a few things already, but some key takeaways is that there's no standardized approach to prioritizing where to install trail lighting, off-street trail lighting. That's where ISL was able to provide value to the city of Beaumont to help identify a methodology for establishing criteria and establishing prioritization. Our budgetary cost estimates are for developing a 10-year program based on $125,000 per year, but more detailed design decisions would be made, including the decision of different materials and exact types of luminaires, other considerations such as ensuring that light pollution is not a concern, or minimal impacts on wildlife or other areas as well. And we are open for questions if there are any, and I will defer to David if they become too technical as the author of the report. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. Very informative. I have a couple of questions, but I'll go to my council members first for their questions. Councilman Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. First, thanks for the feedback on this. You noted 2022 when this came through. It's been a long time coming, so I'm glad it's here. A couple of things for me. So you talked about trail counts. The whole reason for this, or I shouldn't say the whole reason, but a key reason for this is that people were not wanting to go on trails at certain times because it wasn't lit, right? So if you're doing a trail count, right, how do you think about that when, and I'll get into where I get that feedback in a second, but you're only counting people that are there, and I know you can't count people who are choosing not to go because of the light. So how do you think about that?
I think that's a great question. Thank you, through Councillor to the Mayor. The time of day that we chose to do the counts was during daylight hours with reasonably warm weather, intentionally, because we needed to understand what the desirable demands would be when it wasn't lit in the winter, because sunset is, as we know, around 4:30, 5 o'clock. So when people are off work, we understand that there is a demand to use the trails based on our counts. So we would expect that if it was fair weather in December, potentially, or if the trails were lit and people dressed for it, they would potentially use the trails.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The next piece, and so what you haven't got in here is any of that kind of, like, this is an engineering study, right? There is no engagement with public or anything like that. And I can appreciate if you go and ask the public, where should we put lights? They'll say, outside my house. Where this all came from, for me anyway, was back in 21, prior to the last election. I went and spoke to a whole bunch of high school students. And I went in there and did my spiel. But I just asked, what would you like to see improve in Beaumont? And I was expecting things like, get an arcade here, we need a bowling alley, all this sort of stuff. And to a person, they all stood up and said, we need better street lights. We need better trail lighting because we're too scared to walk from A to B at night. And we need crosswalks that have flashing signals because that keeps us safe, right? And I was very proud of these students. I don't know if I would have said that when I was 17. But my question, or I guess my point I'm trying to make is, you're making these decisions on where to go, right? But I'm not suggesting you will, but if you went down to the high school and put a map on, they would give you a very different answer. And those are the people that we're trying to help, not necessarily just them, but so how do you kind of think through that of an engineering study, trail count, all that sort of stuff versus, is there a chance to talk to the public about this before you kind of say, okay, 1 through 10? How do you think about that?
I guess I could step into that. Stepping into the study as it was already started, what we were looking at was the most use of a trail and relating through that prioritization. So if they're using the trail now, like you said, they would like to go from A to B in the dark when it's lit. So if they're so that's why we get to the high numbers of the high volume usage, to ensure that in the dark, they're still able to use those high volume trails. And I think that links up to the prioritization of the spots that we were looking at. However, we could before we go and make any final decisions on where we place these lighting strings along the trail lines, we could do some more in-depth public consultation on it.
Yeah, I don't want to hold it up, but it's kind of like a temperature check. Hey guys, this is where we think that this should go. And, if you maybe use some of your fancy social media places to get these young kids these days, to get them actually engage in this. But I think if you had just a temperature check, I'm not talking about go out and do a full community engagement. Like you guys are the experts, I get that, right? But is there a pulse check here that we could do before we launch into it? Because generally, it looks great. I love how you've lined it out over 10 years. That helps us as we look to consider this at budget. But I don't necessarily need an answer on that, but I think there's an opportunity for a temperature check and just make sure we reach the right audience on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councilman Cook, followed by Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councilman Telebas. Councilman Cook, you have the floor.
Thank you. Really appreciate the presentation and everything that was brought forward. To Councilor Moncalfe-Swain's point, had put this forward during budget based on a lot of what we heard during the campaign. That was definitely a hot topic that a lot of people brought up, was the concern around lighting and paths and parks and stuff like that. I appreciate that the study took into account all sorts of things like the ecological factors of the light pollution, and I believe it's really important as well to kind of strike that balance of, you're trying to put something in for safety, but then you also have to take in those other, recognize those other impacts that this lighting can have. Just a couple questions. Were any parks considered?
So parks were included as an activity generator. So where the trail segment is adjacent or connecting to a park or related recreational use, it would have been given a higher priority.
Okay. And then how much, and I don't know, potentially this later if we look to get more accurate numbers around this, how much does the cost fluctuate if we're looking at solar lighting versus the direct power?
The direct power is going to have a larger fluctuation because dependent on proximity to existing power. Solar is more constant. The cost for budgeted purposes based on an average, because we frankly didn't look at every piece of the trail to understand exactly where the electrical was, because that's the next project that would have to be considered. But maybe David could answer that on behalf of our electrical engineer.
Just wondering kind of like how much solar could we put versus direct and stuff like that, and how much would that impact?
Yeah, if I may, so thanks for the question. So we used a cost per meter method to assess that, and so the average cost was in the middle, with the solar being more expensive overall for the capital cost, with the direct power being maybe $3,000 cheaper per linear unit as a capital cost, but with ongoing maintenance and power electrical costs.
Okay, thank you. And at what point would we be able to get kind of more accurate numbers around this? Like, is this more like right before budget time, or like if it comes at budget, are we approving 125,000? Or like, when will we kind of have a more accurate number as to like what this would look like?
Mr. Mayor, through you, so what we would suggest would be that we would have some design dollars and potential construction costs as the report lays out for 2025. And in that, do a design build that year with also some design money for, say, 2026, based upon the report locations. With that design money, we would be able to come back with a Class A estimate that we would suggest we bring back to council in the first quarter of 2025, just as an information, letting council know that we're on track, or this is where the budget leads as for these segments. That I think would be the best approach on how to move forward on this project.
Okay, thank you. And then just one more question, Mayor.
Yes, please.
Should this not move forward at this budget time, how far in the future can we kind of utilize this report as our guideline to kind of implement a lighting program before it becomes, I guess, obsolete and we'd need another report?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I would suggest that unless there's some changes to amenities in the areas or some new structures that we put into place in some of the parks, this is a good study to build off of. It may just need some tweaking. The only other thing that I would suggest though too is the development of the solar lighting becomes cheaper and more cost effective, as well as the lifespan becomes more effective for its use. That may reduce costs on the solar end of things, and it may allow us to do more solar. So there'll be some more technological advancements through the years on these lightings, which may reduce costs for us or just change the type of products that we're able to use along the trails to meet the demands.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. A bunch of my questions have been gone through, but I just want to stay on the solar versus direct power piece for a short bit. And spreading things out provides the ability to, defer the cost over time. But one of the things that you get up against is continuity in that, right? So like you said, as there's advances in technology, the solar lights may change. And before we know it, 10 years later, we've got 10 different kinds of lights spread around the municipality. And then we have half of them direct power, half of them, have skinny poles that are being kicked over, and half of them are really girthy poles that are standing the test of time because the first ones we put in were too small, so we put in bigger ones later. These are the things that happen, unintended consequences of not biting a chunk off and committing to it. So anyways, those would be my comments. If we're going to do it, let's do it. I completely respect the fact that we're able to chunk it out over time, but I really do think that comes at the expense of continuity. Just maybe some comments on continuity and hodgepodge and piecemeal lighting around the municipality, because that's where we get to if we don't get a product that has a long lifespan that we can depend on being there for a few years.
Mr. Mayor, through you, what I would suggest to maybe alleviate some of those concerns would be a standardized post system. So a lot of times you can change the head of your lights to match other lights at a much reduced cost, because a lot of the basic costs that we're looking at are the power, let's say the electric infrastructure to get to the poles, and the pole installation itself, including the concrete base and the pole. The light heads, as you can see with street lights, a lot of times as we went from the old incandescent to LED, it was just a head or a mast, you know, the head of the light that needed to be changed, not the whole pole structure or its power. And you could also just adapt a solar head back onto one that was powered. It doesn't mean that it needs to be powered with lighting. You could still do solar. The other thing that I would suggest is that we only do full segments at a time, to not have one segment halved out, so that you do have, say, I don't know, LED lighting for half of it, and then we go to a solar powered light app, you know, on the second half. I would do that string to just for the assurance of continuity on the smaller aspects, maybe not the whole program, but at least do our best to make sure that it looks homogeneous.
Yeah, and I think that homogeneous view is something that, you know, needs to be considered. So that kind of leads into my second string of questioning. Is there any neighborhoods right now that are being built or contemplated that are going to include lighting as part of the design?
I wouldn't be able to answer that at this point in time, but our suggestion would be that if it becomes a standard for the municipality, we would look to that. But I think that I could bring something back to council for that.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is because there are different poles and masts and stuff throughout the community already, right? And you know, it's just something to consider, right? Is continuity. So I really like the idea around the, you know, the consideration for, you know, the pole with the changeable heads and stuff like that. So I just think that's important, because piecemeal is not a way to do this. So, okay, that's all. Thanks, man. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Telebas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Obviously, very informative. I guess I'll start with the first question. Do we have existing pathways that have lighting in place?
Mr. Mayor, through you, no, we don't at this time.
Okay. Another question following up to that, in terms of future developments, is this something that we could throw onto the developer as opposed to us as a city having to take on that responsibility?
Mr. Mayor, through you, so the study, what we took in the study was already existing trails.
Okay.
That would have to be a discussion for the planning group to answer on that as we move forward.
Perfect. Another question that I have.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I just want to give an opportunity.
Ms. Raymond, you
Okay.
need to jump in here. Okay. Do
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
you want to just jump in now if you want? Add any more color to the conversation? I've got your mic on for you now. Hang on. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor. I can always add more color, but I won't because I have a tendency to talk too much. Walkways, trail lighting would be considered to be part of the walkway, and it is one of those items that through the service review, we are looking at how we can be able to implement that in new developing areas. It isn't something that we are currently doing right now, as Mr. Chartrand had alluded to, but it is something that is an optional component that we can negotiate with developers, and we are actually considering how to best move that forward in the future.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, just a couple follow-up questions. In terms of lighting source, I know we had mentioned direct power versus solar. My concern, similar to Mr. Van Nieuwerk, just from a different perspective, is if we're running this over 10 years, what's the lifespan or expected lifespan of a solar light? Are we going to be replacing the existing ones that we've put in 10 years later if we're looking at a solar, a solar light?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I guess we did look at both options. One of the negatives to solar power at this time is that the lifespan of the solar lights do not exceed a 10-year rate. They just don't have the lifespan of, say, an electrically powered LED light on a mast, which can give you 25 years of light out of it. So until, like we said, until the industry and improvements occur, you probably won't see an expanded lifespan for those light heads that are solar based.
Perfect. So I guess it would be fair to say if we went the solar solar route, we would be looking at an ongoing project. It wouldn't be a 10-year project because we'd be replacing what we just put in over those 10 years and continuously thereafter.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I think that you would see more operational dollars put towards a program, whether it's every 10 years or every 15. We would want to see how long the lifespan. We would, just because you anticipate it's going to be 10 years and it's still going for 15, we wouldn't change it until it needed, and then we could do a changeover program on that basis.
Just to add to that, our study was focused on the prioritization for the network. I think good takeaway from this is that there needs to be more discussion on the design aspects of it in terms of especially the life cycle costs of the various solutions, because those would be decisions made at the design level. There's going to be different solutions that work for different situations, whether it's a catch-all approach or not. There would be considerations made for that, as well as ensuring that there's some consistency across the city for operations and maintenance and replacement. So
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Just a couple other concerns I have in terms of, I guess more so light pollution and the concerns that come with that. If we're going to light up absolutely every trail, I feel, I know it was marked as a bit of a concern in terms of wildlife and entering onto other residential properties. Is there potentially a way we could reevaluate this and focus on high-risk areas as opposed to lighting up the entire trail system of Beaumont? Is that something we evaluated? Maybe darker areas where we've potentially seen more crime or more potential issues for crime, as opposed to a wide open path that kind of aligns with our streets and what have you?
do you want to answer that? Okay, David. Okay.
Yes, thank you for the question. So part of our criteria for assessing the prioritization of certain trail segment was for improved security. The way we assessed that was through looking at the potential for concealment of either people or activities. So a large wide open trail would be scoring low on that criteria, whereas a kind of narrow trail with a lot of places for people to hide or conceal themselves, that would be receiving a higher score, therefore getting a higher prioritization within the entire program.
Okay, perfect. No, that's all I have. Thank you for the answers. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. Information is really helpful. After hearing the questions of my colleagues, though, I'm wondering about next steps and whether we are able to take it out to the residents and get some input at this point, or is this at this point going to come back as a budget item and we're going to be asking the same questions around the residents? So I'm just wondering if you have an idea there in terms of what's next.
Mr. Mayor, through you, so this study's done for this year. However, if council wishes to, on the first segments and to the design process, we could look at the cost to doing that outreach to ensure that we're putting them in the best places, if that was what council would like. However, we do not have the funds for that this year, and that would need to be undertaken in 2025.
So then, if I may, Mayor, process-wise, if we do not make another motion, then this comes back at budget time. We decide whether or not we're going to spend that amount of money each year, and then it's going to be perhaps consultation as to where it goes would happen at that time. So that might delay it further. So,
Or I'm assuming we could, this will come back to us at budget. At budget time, you could say, for example, the proposal is 125,000 a year for 10 years. You could say in the first year, 125 for construction, but 15,000 for public engagement before construction begins in the first year, and then the program goes forward. We could entertain that at budget workshop.
Yeah, and I'm trying to read the signals I'm getting. We could do now. We could say we'd like some more public consultation. And
Right, we
get a
don't have any
sense of-
money for that. We don't have. Madam Clerk, I'm pretty sure we don't have any cash for that right now. So how will we pay for the public engagement on this?
Right,
That's what
we
I'm-
would have, I understand, we'd have to have a process where we make a motion and then we'd look at where the funding could come from, and we deal with that as another action item, rather than waiting until it looks like January, February of next year before we even decide where it's gonna go.
Yeah.
So
Either
that's just.
Ms. O'Neill or Madam Clerk wants to speak to that. Ms. O'Neill, let me find the mic for you there. Hang on a second. Yeah, your mic is on.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Barnhart, at this time, we don't have any funding allocated to do specific engagement on this. And we don't, we can bring back more information about whether we should be doing engagement on this type of issue. We've received the professional advice here, of course, and we can come back to you with more information. With respect to the budget for capital, if council wanted to make a motion to direct administration to include the lighting as part of the proposed budget, that's something that the council can do tonight.
That help you, Councillor Barnhart? Does help? Councillor Barnhart?
Rather than have a conversation with you, I should probably talk into the
That's
microphone.
okay. I knew what you meant.
Thank you. I appreciate the input, but I don't understand why it's something we might not have consultation about. Maybe you could just clarify, why would this not be something? It sounds like you're trying to tell me something, and I'd like to understand what it is. What is it that would be the downside of doing public consultation on whether we want trail lighting? Not necessarily whether we want it in your backyard, because I think we already know people are going to want it in some places, but not when it's shining into the light of their living room. But what is it that your concern would be?
Ms. O'Neill?
Thank you for the question. I'll try to be clear. We don't have the information for you tonight, so I feel that we can't provide a good response at this moment about what type of engagement can or should happen on this specific topic. So we'd like a little bit more time to bring back that information should council ask for it. Thank you.
Is that satisfactory? Yeah. Well, I've got Councillor Penrod first, then Councillor McGough-Swain. So Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Just a suggestion, another option that's available to us is to refer this report to our Rec and Culture Advisory and or Youth Advisory Committees for commentary. These are already committees that are stood up for just such a moment as this, and I'd be in favor of that as one option. It wouldn't be fulsome community engagement, but what got me thinking about it was Councillor Munkoff-Swain's particular concern or idea of making sure that we consult with some of the youth that first brought this idea up. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McGough-Swain, then I have Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, this was only here for information, right? And so if we do nothing, we get information and we wait till budget. I think it's a good suggestion to make a motion to push it to those committees, Councillor Penrod. And add on to that, ask for administration's recommendation around engagement on it. That could come back plenty of time before budget. So I support kind of that general direction. I don't know if you're scribbling away on a motion over there, Councillor Penrod, but or maybe Ms. Bourget is. But yeah, I like that. Instead of doing nothing and then getting to budget and be like, oh, we missed another year of light. So yeah.
I get that. So before I'll go to Councillor Van Newkirk, and then I'll go to administration to figure out a potential motion to get us what we want to get to. So Councillor Newkirk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. A good conversation. I was just trying to think of a way to tie in, what we have with what we've done in the past, and we're just off of a pretty successful. I don't know that we know the outcome yet, but I think it'll prove to be a pretty successful exercise with asking the public to pick locations for crosswalks, right? So perhaps some kind of a similar thing. We have all these segments. Perhaps we can use those segments and prioritize segment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Like that can be done, I think, fairly quickly and more easily and distributed and shared. And it's quite a easy thing to do. So anyways, just a suggestion on, how we take what we have and use a tool that we just used, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel on engagement, and it'll get us a little bit further down the line without having to set up 40 meetings with 40 different groups, 40 different dates, compile the data, so, yeah. Anyways.
Good point. Appreciate that as well too. So I think administrative services or legislative services are looking after doing a motion for us. Let's just take a second and let them work on a potential motion for us to get some public engagement, information back from administration. And then I'll do the motion to accept this presentation as information at a later part of our discussion. So just give us a minute and we'll work through this. Great report, by the way. While they're doing that, I did have a couple of questions, but they mostly got asked by my colleagues. But the biggest question I had was the lifespan of those poles and lights. I mean, the example you showed with the walking path near the bushes, They're quite tall, nice steel poles, hard to vandalize, for lack of a better term. Those poles and lights seem to have a pretty good lifespan. You mentioned, Mr. Chartrand, roughly 25 years or 25 years is a pretty decent lifespan for those lights?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, Mr. Mayor, through you. So we would want to partake in the design that would include like a concrete base structure with the proper steel voltage, L bolts and light pole standard. Where in past experience, I've even seen posts that are pounded into the ground and packed back with gravel. We wouldn't want to do that to get the 25 to 40-year lifespan out of the light poles.
That helps a lot. Thank you. Madam Clerk. Your mic is on. Hang on. Now it's on.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, if we were going to be having a motion coming out of this, we don't need to receive it for information. We can just go with the motion.
Okay.
Council has discussed with regards to potentially referring it back to administration on the community engagement piece. And then there was motions talking with regards to referring it to an advisory committee. So I'm just wondering in what direction council would like to go.
Good question. Councilor Penrod, your hand is up. Let's go to you first, and then we'll try and get this moved along. Councilor.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question for filler while we were composing the motion, but I see merits in what has been suggested around the board. So just to clarify, does it need to be either or? Are we free to make both? Yeah, so that's what my preference would be, I think.
Okay, Councilor Telebus, you have the floor.
Thank you. Obviously, public engagement is critical, but my concern is that we engage the public on an ad hoc basis, which causes significant financial strain and strain to our administrative team. What I would like to see if we're doing that approach or that proposal is we go ahead with what Councillor Penrod has proposed, start it off with the committee and potentially look at combining future engagements and include this in it so that we're reducing costs and being a little more fiscally responsible in the engagement that we do with the community.
Okay, appreciate that. Any further comments from members of council? So we do see some agreement on getting some feedback from the committee and or the public in general, or administration coming up with some ways to provide public engagement. Do you have a couple of draft motions, Madam Clerk, on the screen we can have a quick look at? Have a look at those, council. Please. Sorry?
Providing motions.
Oh, just, could you, Madam Clerk, could you add a D to providing in the second line, please? Thank you. So we can do one or both of these motions. I guess an I and a D, thanks. They're not mutually exclusive. They could work in conjunction with each other. And this report will come back to us at budget time, I believe, to talk about essentially including the budget for 2025. So is a member of council willing to move one of these two motions? Or perhaps both at the same time if you want? Councilor Penrod.
Thanks, Mayor. To Councillor Natellenboss's point, I'll move the motion to refer to our standing committees. And I'll let my colleague move the other one to refer back to administration if he so chooses. So I'd like to move that the May 14, 2024 report trail lighting study be referred to the Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee and to the Youth Advisory Committee for their feedback, and that they provide any recommendations or comments to council by the end of. So I think sorry, I didn't read it through until the very end. I think we would want it by the end of Q3 so that we have that information back in time for budget.
For budget, yeah, for workshop.
And I will accept my own friendly amendment.
Perfect. All right, motion on the floor, discussion on the motion, council. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, okay, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion as read out. That carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Council. Council Telebus, do you wish to move the other motion that's on the screen a moment ago? Oh, hang on. No? Okay. I thought someone said you wanted to move it. I may have misunderstood the conversation. No further, oh, Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, just a question for administration around engagement and the cost of engagement. So what has been socialized up here a little bit has been, something that I would see comprising time from comm staff in-house at this point. I don't see a big effort required externally for this. Maybe just some comments for administration. What would it take to put together a prioritization style survey to get out to the community? I don't see that costing huge amounts of money, but any idea? There's a light blinking behind you. Don't worry. Corey.
Sorry, Miss O'Neill, your mic's on now.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk. I'm sorry, our folks from comms aren't here today to answer that specific question. I do know that it takes a lot of effort to pull this all together and then time for the team to analyze and pull, a concise report together and do all that filtering through. Actually, I'm told that Mike B is actually on Zoom, but I'm not sure if he's available to answer your question. So I think for council, if you're looking for information, we can provide that to you. I just can't answer at this moment.
Yeah, thank you. Could administration put that motion back up? Sorry, I just would like to read that again and contemplate it a second.
Do you wish to move that, Councillor Van Newkirk? Once you have a chance to review it again.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold off. I'm gonna go a councillor inquiry route here.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. You don't need to put it back up. I think I can remember what it says, but I'm inclined to want to move it, but I can see where it might not pass, given the comments that have been made. But to the administration, I guess the question is, before we can send this back to the committees, wouldn't the administration need to put something together to bring that back to the committees? Or is it just go, here's the minutes of the meeting and that's it? I mean, I think the administration is going to need to look at this issue and then it has to put it into a report and bring it back to, I mean, I just can't see that the administration isn't going to be looking at this issue again. So, I mean, I'm just wondering if it doesn't make sense to send it back to you for, maybe it's not the exact wording that's in that motion. Maybe it's something slightly different.
Ms. Bujaya?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Barnhart. Administration always works with the committees and we do provide them reports. So anyone who supports the committee would be responsible for supporting the committee and helping them understand why that report is in front of them and what council was seeking from them. So based on the motion that was passed, my understanding is that the intention is to have the committees review the report, consider the lighting trail study and the next steps that are flushed out in the report and provide their input so that council has that as part of its decision-making process.
So then Ms. Vijaya, the committee chairs would come back and report. I mean, I'm sorry, but I
Sure.
still see the administration as having to help massage that so that it comes back in a way that council can deal with it.
Of course, administration prepares the reports on behalf of the committee. So the chairs may come and speak to the report, but they could also just provide the report on behalf of the committee and administration can help facilitate that process.
Well, just to the other members of council, I think it would be a lot cleaner if the administration came back with a report on the results of that consultation with the two committees, but I'll wait until an inquiry comes because at this point, I don't think people want to go that route, but it seems to me that we're going to be back in the same place again after the committees meet. And then we're going to hear we could hear two different committees, two different points of view, and the administration is going to have to go back and figure it out. So, I mean, I see some agreement, but don't want to go through the motion if we don't want to go there, but yes, definitely.
Okay. Councillor Penrod, followed by Councillor Newkirk. Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't speak for Councillor Natellenbos, but what I heard that I thought was interesting was that maybe we could develop a pattern of a monthly or bi-monthly or whatever the timing is of omnibus survey where we know we have this engagement piece that is happening on a regular basis. And we're just feeding in issues that we want to hear feedback on. And like one like this might not be more than 2 or 3 questions. And maybe that would make sense to have several issues in one piece as opposed to what I heard you say, Nathan, Councillor Natellenbos, was this more ad hoc issue by issue approach. So that's just a comment for now, and we'll think about how to maybe move in that direction.
Thank you. Councilman Newkirk.
Yeah, I thought I was done, but maybe just a concluding thought. So
Okay.
Councilor Barnhart, I think you're bang on. We're gonna end up asking for engagement. We're gonna end up funding some engagement in some way, shape, or form. I can't see us moving to trail path lighting and prioritizing that without support from the community. I can't see us doing the prioritization without support from the community. Councilor Malkoff Swain started this whole discussion out because of conversations with, the high school, which promoted this. We all hear that we need to light paths. We go to communities where paths are lit up and send each other's pictures of the lights because we're all interested in it. I know I do. So we're going to get there. And I think it'll just take a little bit longer here to go through this process, but we'll get there. So I'll stop there.
All right, seeing no further comments or questions, I think we've discussed this topic. And gentlemen, thank you for the presentation this evening. Much information was very, very helpful. And we'll see you again, I'm sure, back at budget with this item coming back as part of budget deliberation. Thank you very much. Next, our agenda is going back to 7.2, Community Grant Funding Recommendations, April 2024. Ms. Mamcher, I believe you're presenting with us again, and please introduce your guest, please. And the microphone is on whenever you're ready to begin, please.
Wonderful. Thank you to be here again. As stated earlier, Joanna Mancher, Team Lead Arts and Events. Here with me this evening is Julian Winters, Chair of the Grant Funding Advisory Committee. Similar to the report for the last presentation there, this is the first intake of the Community Grant Program under the new Municipal Grant Funding Program. The objective of the Community Grant Stream is to provide support to nonprofit organizations for a variety of initiatives, events, festivals, projects that benefit the community of Beaumont at large, or for their organization as part of the broader community. There are 2 intakes per year. This year, there's a total of $70,000 available through the community grant stream. The Grant Funding Advisory Committee is established as a committee of council, and their mandate includes making recommendations related to the awarding of the community grant program funds. Similar to the Arts Grant Program, applications are first screened by administration for completeness and eligibility compliance. Applications are then circulated to the members of the committee. They conduct an initial review independently and individually. They come together as a group and finalize their recommendations that are here before you this evening. For the April 2024 intake, administration received 10 applications for a total request of funding of $86,000. In terms of the process in general, there was a very large number of applications, far exceeded the amount of funding that was available. The total request for funding of $86,000 exceeded the $70,000 that's available. And what's recommended before you this evening is half of that of $35,000. So we recognize that surely there will be a number of applicants that will be disappointed in the results tonight. Yet I'm pleased to turn the microphone over to Julian Winters to share the projects that we are able to recommend supporting this intake.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. And I just want to say, being the 3rd year now involved with this committee, the administration has done a great job each year. It's great improvements in terms of the scoring rubric. It's making it easier to discuss and evaluate these different cases. And also, I think the application process itself has gotten easier for the applicants and it's less cumbersome. So, yes. So the first application that we are recommending $7,500 dollars be awarded to out of the grant funding committee total budget is for the Beaumont Minor Football Association. They're looking for a 4-man sled for training for their athletes. They currently cannot share with the high school, unfortunately, due to insurance reasons that they've exhausted and looked into. So this would help with teamwork, strength, conditioning, agility, team bonding, et cetera, and help grow their program, which sounds like it's had a lot of momentum and being quite successful. The next recommended item is the Special Olympics. Leduc and area is seeking funds to help train volunteers. There's a certification process where if they can fund training for more volunteers, they can increase the scope of their organization and offer more services for the Special Olympic participants. The Beaumont and Arts Agriculture Society is again running their Rural Roots Fair, which is a well-attended event, especially for young families. They have a different type of theme each year with different partners coming in. That is not only a great educational opportunity for the community, but I believe it also has, from their description, well attended from outsiders out of the community bringing into Beaumont and increasing the visibility of the town and what it offers. And we're recommending $8,000 be awarded to the Rural Roots Fair to help maintain it being a free event for everyone. The next request is from the Beaumont Chiefs Junior Hockey Club, their 40th anniversary celebration. Don't need to say much here. I'm sure everybody's aware of the Beaumont Chiefs and been a longstanding institution in the community and provided not only sports and recreation, but entertainment for the town for 40 years now. And the committee is recommending $8,000 be awarded to support their 40th anniversary celebration. The next is the Beaumont Soccer Association, the under 5 and under 7 net rejuvenation project. Currently, they're using these flimsy collapsible style nets, and it's posed somewhat of a safety hazard and durability and quality of these nets. They're looking for funds to help them fund replacement of these nets with more sturdier quality and safer for the children playing. And we're recommending $5,000 to be awarded to the Beaumont Soccer Association. And the last one is the Empowering Women's Entrepreneurs Beaumont Night Market 2024 Festival. This festival, again, is another well-attended, utilizes Beaumont infrastructure at the field house. It's unique in terms of events that are hosted in Beaumont. It supports 70 to 75 vendors, some of which are local vendors, and they expect to welcome over 4,000 visitors. Being the impact of this event, we're recommending the award of $5,000 out of the budget. And that was all of the recommended items.
Great. Thanks for the presentation and the information. You gave us a moment on the breakdown of the groups and how they were awarded the money. That's very appropriate or helpful to us. Question, members of council for our presenters. Councilor McGough-Swain, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. First, thanks for your patience. I know you kind of got a bit of a false start there. But so thanks. I know volunteering time, all that sort of stuff. So really appreciate you sticking around. And as someone who's chased those nets across the field many, many times and been hit by them, and I think that's more fun for the kids than the actual soccer, but looking forward to that. The question I had was just around the rural roots. And I think I can ask this here. So they have an operating grant. And so just our process of, okay, they get an operating grant from us and then they're coming for a separate grant. Can you just help me talk me through that?
Certainly. Thank you for the question, Councillor McGough-Swain, through the mayor to you. The way the overarching municipal grant funding program is set up is that it is open for groups to receive funding from multiple grant funding streams at the same time. The information regarding their current funding for an operating grant was made available to the Grant Funding Advisory Committee as part of their review process. So that is taken into consideration.
Okay, that's good. And yeah, not questioning the work. I knew you'd follow her to the letter of the law. I just didn't, I should have known it, but I don't have that particular policy memorized off the top of my head. So I'm just curious. So thanks for taking that into consideration and all the work for you and the committee. Appreciate it.
Hey, Councillor McCook, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, just want to reiterate all the great work and the importance of the work that you guys do on these committees. So thank you. You have some really great recommendations laid out in the general comment section. Is any of this communicated to the groups at any point, or do we kind of have an FAQ type document that people can look at and make sure that they're giving you guys the best information to make the best decision?
Certainly. Thank you for the question, Councillor McCook, through the mayor to you. Communication is always a challenge. Someone once told me, and it's actually stuck with me, that information is not relevant until it's relevant. And sometimes I think, depending on the outcome of tonight's work, I might find some emails coming into me tomorrow morning say, can you help me understand the results? We do have a number of resources available online, including the full guidelines, FAQ documents. We recently held a a grant writing workshop where there's some question and answers through the application process. All potential applicants' perspective, whether they're formulating an application right now or considering one for the future, are very welcome and encouraged to reach out to administration at any time. And I think as we go through this process, we continue to assess the type of commonalities, both positive and negative, that we're seeing from the applications and adjust our resources accordingly.
Perfect, thank you. I know you guys have always been really supportive to the groups that apply and helping them kind of give you the best information. So I appreciate that. One other question, how often do we or have we seen kind of the same type of events come forward for funding?
Certainly, thank you. Another great question. There are certainly some repeat and well-established events, and 2 of them are included on this list for recommended funding. I do believe that administration's intention with the overarching grant funding policy is to look to address the sustainability of these types of long-term events in the community and trying to carve out funding streams that are most appropriate for that. So to be able to balance the support for long-standing, well-established, and highly anticipated community events together at the same time with the requests that are coming in for new initiatives and new events as well.
Perfect, thank you. Appreciate that. And again, thank you for all the work.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Penrod, followed by Councillor Telebas. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I don't want to be accused of favoritism or anything, so I'll ask the same process question for this committee. Just wondering, it sounds like we had lots of applications in this case for more funds than were actually available for the entire year. But I won't make the assumption. How does this compare to years past?
Certainly another great question. This intake is fairly consistent in terms of numbers of applications. I would say, based on recent memory, I would say that the requests, the funding amounts are starting to go up and groups are requesting closer to the maximum amount. So although the numbers are fairly similar, the total request is going higher.
And because you've been crunching the numbers and going through the applications for several years now, interested in both of your takes on this. Just curious how you would interpret that. I guess Ms. Mancher is the one that sits at both tables for the arts grants and these community grants. How would you differentiate those differences? Are we communicating better with one group, or is it more a matter that the groups that fall under this category are a little bit more established and maybe have the resources and organizational power to get the grants together?
Sure. Yeah, in comparison this to previous years, I mean, some of the, there's definitely new applicants here as well, some mixtures, some that I anticipated seeing in the past and coming back and didn't. So I think you see a bit of everything. And to Ms. Muncher's point, maybe it's just generally, like even the requests and the sizes surprises me of some of the equipment needs of some of these organizations and how much things are costing nowadays. So I think it's, just representative of the economy in general, perhaps, that things are just generally costing more and the size of these requests could likely still continue to rise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Oh, Ms. Mancher, you want to expand on that a little bit, or we're good?
The only comment I would make is that particularly for events or organizations that are tracking participation with the growth of the city, the organizations and the demographics they're reaching, those numbers are increasing as well.
Thank you. So, and just one more comment, if I could pass on through Mr. Winter, thanks to the committee. And I just wanted to give you kudos as I read the reports. You did your work, you came back with what we expected and more. So you went above and beyond in sort of giving some recommendations, both to council, but also to folks who might apply as to how they might give a more successful grant application in the future. So really appreciate your attention to detail and willingness to improve the program from your end. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I see Ms. Mancher's fingerprints in some of those, in the way they're collated and put together and presented. So thank you for your continuing support of these committees and their work and the excellent job that you're doing.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Telebus, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Pretty straightforward. I just saving my comments for last. So this is just a combination of both the arts and community grants. Obviously appreciate all the individuals that participate in this. It's a lot of work and it's tough decisions. So I also appreciate that there's a grading rubric that's being used to appropriately identify who should be successful for some of these grants. A lot of people don't realize in the background, a lot of these nonprofit organizations are primarily based on volunteers, and it basically any additional requirements for funding will be passed on to the end user. And a lot of these programs are supporting our youth and making sure, and these grants are helping make sure that these programs are feasible and sustainable. Because as it stands now, all of these groups are trying to obviously not make a profit. They're working on the bottom line so that everyone can afford to participate in either arts programs or sports programs or other events that happen throughout the community. So really appreciate these grants, and they're difference makers for a lot of these organizations. So it's just important that this continues and that everyone who feels they're eligible should be applying, because again, we're going through a fair assessment and making sure that those that require it most are getting the funds that they're entitled to. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate that. And again, thank you for all the work your committee is doing and the volunteer time and being a bit patient tonight. It's always very, very helpful and appreciated. Seeing no further comments from members of council, I'll look for the motion from administration in the report, which I'll make myself, that the funding allocation is set out in attachment 1 of the May 14, 2024 community grant funding recommendations, April 24 intake be approved. Discussion on the motion from members of council. See no discussion. Thank you, council. I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you. And that carries unanimously 7-0. Thank you, council. Thank you to our presenters and your work on the committee. Much appreciated. With that, council, we're just past an hour and a half, so we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll come back to item 7.6, then on to the CEO update, and then move to our closed session shortly thereafter. So we'll see you back here roughly 6:45. We're in recess. Thank you. Yes. Thank you much. We are live back after our short break here at 6:50. We'll continue with meeting this evening. 7.6, overview of the 2025 budget process. Mr. DeBlanco, I believe you're presenting this evening, so your microphone is on, sir.
Good evening to the mayor and council. I'm Curtis DeFranco. I'm the Director of Finance for the city. Before council is a report that presents an overview of the 2025 budget process, timelines, and some options for public engagement. Mayor Daniluk provided feedback to administration on last year's budget process to better support council through the next budget process. To ensure there's an understanding of expectations, administration is providing council with this report, which has two purposes. First is to provide a space for all council members to consider and comment on the upcoming annual process. The second is to confirm details on this process and with sufficient time to make any adjustments. So the feedback received includes an opportunity for council to review the 10-year capital plan prior to the start of the budget process to identify any potential additions or changes to the capital plan. Next is bonus time for council to consider the proposed budget prior to submitting questions to administration. There's also an interest in changing dates and times for council budget deliberations, including an appetite to dedicate one full day to budget deliberations rather than several evenings. There's also an opportunity for having elected officials engage directly with the public on the proposed budget through budget open houses. So a typical budget process as context is within the report. There's a table within the report under currently scheduled date. So that outlines what a typical budget process would be, similar to last year. And then the feedback I went through would be in the far right column with adjusted dates. Administration doesn't anticipate issues with delivery of the budget in either process. Administration would just shift the internal deadlines to accommodate that. So within that first item is the review of the 10-year capital plan. So similar to the process that was used last year on that, administration will present the 10-year outlook of all capital programs on the projects that have been rolled forward from last year's iteration of that 10-year capital plan. The requirements over the next 10 years are expected to be substantial to maintain current assets as well as keep up with growth. And then during this review, which in the document is scheduled for July 23rd, council may identify additions or changes to the plan or direct administration to provide more information in the budget document. Next on public engagement, administration has continued to increase opportunities for education and engagement on the budget through use of a tool called Balancing Act, which also includes an online simulated tax receipt, which will show each individual taxpayer breakdown of where their tax dollars go. And then the Balancing Act tool allows citizens to balance their own budget and reprioritize programs and services. These tools have become a part of the annual process for citizens to be engaged on the budget. Next is the A Place to Go project. City's undertaking a community financial sustainability project called A Place to Grow. And this is to engage citizens on the most appropriate financial strategies to activate city projects identified over recent years. Council administration will then have an affirmation of citizens' priorities for city services and amenities, a sense of willingness to consider different methods for funding of these, and by implementing community and council priorities. And citizens will have a heightened understanding of the many priorities that are being managed by the city, as well as the recent accomplishments. An update on the findings of this engagement will be presented to council in late June or early July. Next, options for budget engagement. Administration understands that members of council are interested in having more opportunities to provide public input directly on the proposed budget after responses to budget questions and prior to the budget deliberation meetings at the end of November and start of December. There are options within the report that would allow for this type of engagement while also complying with legislative requirements for council meetings. First option is to schedule a non-statutory public hearing. This allows the public to provide input on the proposed budget. Option requires council to call this special council meeting for these hearing dates. Benefits of this allows all of council to be in the room and participate at the same time. And this ensures that the compliance with legislative requirements. Public can participate by submitting written submissions or in person. And it would also be broadcast online. And it would be held here in council chambers. Non-statutory public hearing is a common approach other municipalities use for this type of engagement. Potential drawbacks of this option are that a non-statutory public hearing are very formal. The emphasis is on hearing from the public rather than having a back and forth dialogue. A second option would be to have members of council holding budget open houses, where members of the public would be invited to have less formal dialogue with council on the proposed budget. Administration would support council by advertising these sessions, arranging for the room, and preparing documents with highlights from that budget. One item to consider on those is that a maximum of 3 members of council can be present, therefore avoiding quorum. The option has the advantage of being, once again, less formal and having more of a dialogue with residents and council. As it would, it's important to note these sessions would be constituent meetings and not be broadcast online. So yeah, that concludes my report for this evening. I'll turn it back over to council.
Mr. Blanco, thank you very much for this report. I do want to thank council and administration for the flexibility and looking at a revised schedule for the 2025 budget process. This is a very good example of council listening to concerns in the community, of having a chance for more input. I want to thank Councilor Van Nieuwkerk for reminding our senior council members from the previous term of having done open houses in the past and the decided to bring them back. And I really appreciate that suggestion. It is one of the options we'll discuss in a moment here, but that's where that came from, and refresh my memory of doing it before. So again, a great example of council listening to the community and also having our own desire to have more public engagement as well. It's a two-way street. And so with that, I'll turn over to members of council. Any questions, Mr. DeBlanco? Then we'll go into discussion on option 1 or 2 in terms of public engagement. Councilor Penrod, followed by Councilor Monkoff-Swain. Councilor Penrod?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll just say a thank you to you too for shepherding the process and your heart to ensure that we're continuously improving our process with community engagement. We may never get it perfect, but I think this represents a significant effort on both the part of administration and the entirety of council to make sure that the public feels informed and heard in advance of decision time, so that there's real opportunity for dialogue and potential changes. So if you're listening, we're listening to you. Keep feeding back to us. And then just a process question for administration. Is there anything that precludes us doing both option 1 and 2?
Mr. Blanco or Ms. Bujaya? Ms. Bujaya.
Thank you, Councillor Penrod. Through the mayor to you. No, the only consideration is time and resourcing. So it might be a little taxing for council to hold both a non-statutory public hearing plus these open houses. And just as a friendly reminder, of course, any councillor can meet with residents at any time. That's part of the duties and role of a councillor. So this would not preclude you from deciding to hold such meetings on your own. But I think we just want to give a little bit of consideration of just the amount of work and engagement and even just the fatigue for members of the public too.
Do appreciate that. Part of the reason that I'm interested in both is because option 1 affords the ability to record the session, which just gives us that much more accessibility to folks who may not be available during the time or to turn out to the particular place that we choose. And for all the reasons you just mentioned, our ability to conduct open houses will be limited too. So that's where I'm thinking now, but love to hear what my colleagues are thinking.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Monkoff-Swain, followed by Councilor Van Nieuwkerk, followed by Councilor Barnhart. Councilor Monkoff-Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll go to July. You framed it as presentation and discussion of 10-year capital plan. I promise I'm not going to give you the same speech as I do every year because you're nearly there. In the text, you say council may identify any potential additions or changes to the capital plan, or direct administration provide more information on administration's proposed budget document. So I'm glad that text is there. I just think that the title is confusing. Like in previous years, we've had people come and show up. Some people have had their list ready to go, some people haven't, right? So if we could just make it extremely clear in July 23rd, that that is the time for council to bring forward anything that they would like administration to think through, not necessarily to put above the line, but to have it budgeted out. We discuss it and then we move forward with that. So I just stress on July 23rd, if we could just make sure we give council enough warning to know that that's the time where to get all the projects we hear from the community that you're not necessarily hearing, to get that out. So I'll leave that there. Thank you. As it relates to the options, my preference is option 2, and to Councillor Penrod's point, what we've done in the past, and for the record, the reason why we stopped doing it was because of the pandemic. But moving forward, we can put all those poster boards. They do go up online, all that sort of stuff as well. So my preference is option 2. There's plenty of chances for folks to come in. They can get in front of council, speak. To me, the timeline is we're pushing it out a bit, but it's still quite tight. I don't know where they would find the days to be able to weave both in. So my recommendation is 2, and I would really look forward to having those open houses. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Council, and I'll work with administration to make sure we get an email out to council to remind them of the July 23rd capital discussion as you've outlined, and we'll make sure we have everybody properly informed for that one. I do appreciate that. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to reiterate some thanks here to administration. I'm not usually dual and triple thanking. Usually if others have done it, then I don't, but I think what's in front of us now actually brings together a whole bunch of feedback that we've got over quite a long period of time, and that's been said. And we're trying to walk the line of meeting a timeline, doing the things that we need to do, and incorporating more. So, that's what we're trying to do here. Thank you to Councillor Monkoff-Swain for being very crystal clear about July 23rd. I held back on my list last year because others weren't ready, and I think that hampered our process a little bit. So, and then when it comes time, Mayor, I would be happy to move motion 2, but we can finish discussion.
I'll come to you shortly on that, Councillor. Appreciate your comments. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I too think this is, it's been a while and we're glad to see it. I think sharing all of our comments, we've finally got to something that is pretty close to what we all were looking for. I wondered what happened to the budget open houses, so thank you for bringing it back, if we can go that route. I found they were extremely helpful, and I guess the 2 questions that I have, one is about in option 1, if we were to do both, I don't have a big problem with that, but a question around the public hearing. I can't remember, is it only a statutory public hearing where you have to be present before you can vote on an item? Or is it a non-statutory one? Do you have to be, I wouldn't want to see a situation where we couldn't vote on the budget because we couldn't make it to that meeting.
Ms.
So,
Bujaya.
Ms. Bujaya, you can help me with that.
Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. So just to clarify, usually that would be a land use planning issue where it would be a bit of a concern. But if you miss all of a statutory public hearing, then you would be prevented from voting on that bylaw. If you miss part of the public hearing, then you have the choice as to whether you participate or not.
So this would not be that.
I don't foresee that being an issue, but that is something we would probably need to double check.
Double check to make sure, because that would not be okay.
My understanding is no, but I would like to double check that to confirm that fact.
I think that's something to check. The second option, second question I have regarding the open houses, I don't recall it ever being an issue for a quorum because of it not being a meeting. The way it's been handled in the past anyway, my colleagues know, people would just talk to different people. It wasn't like we were jointly making a decision. So is that, I'm sure you got it here for a reason. So tell me the thinking behind that.
Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. That is a bit of a sticky situation because the item being discussed is the budget and you're moving the decision arguably along the continuum. It would be considered a council meeting if quorum was there because the topic of conversation is something that should be in front of council in a duly called council meeting. So anytime council is discussing something, that is a decision of council that has an impact to the community, it should be done within a council meeting. So the safest thing to do to stay on side of the legislation is to treat it like small constituency meetings and just ensure we don't have quorum. But administration could help facilitate the schedule and the process to help councillors arrange that and stay on the right side of the legislation.
Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. Yes, and I could definitely live with option one as well as option two if, as long as we know the legalities behind it. But option two would be my number one choice.
Thank you, Counselor. Seeing for the members of council willing to speak, I'm also in favor of option two. I do think the public open houses was a great tool before, and bringing it back is the right thing to do, and it gives us a chance to engage with our public members on the budget effectively. So with that, I'll go to Councilor Van Nieuwkerk to make a motion based on the report, please. Councilor Van Nieuwkerk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We'll just wait for administration to put up a motion for option two for.
Yeah.
Looks good, thank you. I will move that option two, as set out in the overview of the 2025 budget process, be approved, and that by the end of July 2024, administration provide a report to adjust the council meeting dates as required to facilitate the proposed 2025 budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just briefly.
Sure.
I'll just underscore the comments that administration made in the original or initial presentation tonight. The bringing back of the conversation around poster boards just allows for the public to engage in a more informal way that many are more comfortable with, and that's what it comes down to for me. We can mull about and shoot the breeze and have a donut and those kinds of things, and it leads to a more favorable feedback situation, I find, and I think we'll all have a fun time doing it. So
I agree. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McGough-Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, just briefly, and I probably should let it go, but I can't. So, Mr. Bajaj, your comment about quorum, like I recognize your role is to provide advice, right? I personally, I think that's overkill that we have to like rotate people in and out to avoid four in there. I think if you were to ask the general public, they would rather councillors there to talk them through that. It's not like the 4+ of us are sitting in a corner huddling up. Personally, I would accept that risk, but I think when we come back with the meeting, when you come back with what's provided here, if you could just provide a bit more content around that and get some thoughts on it. So, yeah, I think that's probably going a little too far for what we're actually trying to achieve. So, appreciate the advice, and we'll just look to get a bit more detail when that report's come back. But I do support the motion, and I'll be voting for it.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I appreciate the comments. Council, would you please vote on the motion on the screen? And that carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Council. And one last quick comment. I do appreciate administration's flexibility by bringing back our dates, even by a couple of 3 weeks. It pushed back the entire process, the entire administration of our entire city back 1 month earlier in the budget process for their deadlines they have to meet. So it took a team effort to have that approach taken, and administration went out of their way to accommodate more flexibility. And I want to thank them for that. And it gives the public more chance for intervention and discussion, which is equally important. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item 9, councillor inquiries, response and reports. Both of Councillor Barnhart's inquiries were updated. Are there any further councillor inquiries this evening? Councillor Telebus, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 inquiries. First one being, please provide information on options on how we're promoting local employment. Also, what incentives exist, if any, to local businesses who hire local residents. And then the secondary one is online portal summary. So please provide a summary of the most frequent concerns residents are submitting on the online service portal.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Any other members of council with any inquiries this evening? Seeing none. Thank you. Move on to our next item, which is item 10, CU update. Ms. O'Neill, I believe you're looking in for Mr. Schwartz this evening. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'm pleased to provide the following update on behalf of CAO Schwartz. Our first update is with respect to the growth that we're seeing in residential and commercial permit numbers here in the city. So from January to April this year, the city has received 154 new residential housing construction permits, which is a 161% increase compared to the same time period last year. This represents 52 million in residential building construction value. Last year, for the same time period, that was 22 million, so a significant increase. On the commercial side, construction is very active. We have 16 permits received to date in 2024, which is $33.2 million in construction value. Last year, for that same time, we were at 365,000. So very, very different this year versus last year. Our planning and comms team have launched the public awareness campaign for the land use bylaw update that's coming to council later in June. Will be brought to council for first reading in June. Next, in our corporate and analytics and technology team, 2 city staff from our technology team attended the Prairies Municipal Information Systems Association conference earlier this month. Our staff presented the city's cybersecurity program that is considered to be ahead of our peers in comparable municipalities. It was an opportunity for us to receive recognition from our peers on our digital transformation journey. So well done by those folks. In economic development, a couple of events that we supported. The economic development team co-hosted a regional celebration of the economy last week. The event was held at Century Mile Racetrack, and we celebrated economic development in the Southern Edmonton region. This event was attended by political leaders, administration, and local developers. Secondly, as part of the regional initiative with Leduc County, Devon, and Beaumont, a job fair was held as well as a career symposium last week. Next, over to our infrastructure department. Spring is in the air. Our roads team is out street sweeping with about 50% of the city complete. Once that's done, the crews will move over to line painting. Citywide spring cleanup continues. We're doing all the garbage pickup from ditches and parks, and mowing and trimming will begin shortly. And then if you've gone down 50th Street, you'll see that the Centreville Park sail shades have been installed and the bollard lighting installation is underway. Park preparations for the grand opening on May 26th for Beaumont Days. An update on our Safe Step crosswalk survey that closed at the end of April. We did receive 122 responses that are currently being reviewed and evaluated. Administration will work with our transportation consultant to confirm the appropriate upgrades at the selected locations, and it's anticipated that the upgrades will begin midsummer and continue on to be complete throughout 2024. And then finally, we had our first full month of the expanded transit service. So for the month of April, we had an average weekday ridership of 85 and a weekend ridership of 2023. This, when compared to last year, is about a 217% increase in monthly ridership. So we're looking forward to seeing how the summer months and then September, once school starts, to see those numbers come in. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Appreciate that. Any questions for Ms. O'Neill on the CAO update? Oh, Councilor Talabas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill, for all that information. This probably won't be a question that you can answer, but I do know, obviously, the cybersecurity world is getting pretty dangerous out there. So just wondering if you could shed some light on, I guess, kind of the system we follow, if we do any pen tests or if we have any white hat hackers that have tested our systems and ensured that we are protected beyond. I know we mentioned that we're above and beyond others, but what does that mean? And just have we tested our systems to that degree?
Ms. O'Neill.
Thank you for that question, Councilor Natellenboss. I cannot answer on the spot about our detailed cybersecurity testing that we're doing, but I'm happy to send you more information about it.
Perfect,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Seeing no further questions for Ms. O'Neill, we'll move on to our next item. Correspondence, any correspondence, Madam Clerk? I didn't think there was, nothing's changed. Thank you. Notice of the motion, any notice of motion from members of council this evening to be brought forward? Councilor Telebus, you have the floor.
Perfect, thank you. This motion was very timely in the conversation we had, so I would like to move that by the end of the fourth quarter of 2024, administration provide a report on options to reduce the cost to residents on engagement. So things like combining surveys into single engagements and what other options could potentially or available to continue to encourage public engagement.
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate that. On any further notice in the motion this evening be brought forward? There was just the one. Thank you. Move on to our next item on our agenda, which is closed session. So with that, I'll ask for a motion from council, which I'll move myself here to move into closed session. I move that council move into closed session at 7:16 PM pursuant to the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act, sections 24 and 25. Discussion on the motion. Members of council. Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the motion to move in camera? That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. As soon as we are off live, we'll move into closed session and begin our session. Thank you. Thank you. We are live once again in our council meeting for May 14th, 2024. No business arrived from our closed session, so simply I'll have one last comment before I call the adjournment. This past week, I was invited by Edmonton Global to participate in a bit of a trade mission to Ottawa. My primary role as elected official in the group was to convey to the minister from, or the ambassador from Japan, also the ambassador from United Arab Emirates, who both countries have significant investments in Alberta. And we want to make sure that they have a favorable impression of the Edmonton region, which includes Beaumont. I do believe the mission was successful. I had two very good meetings with the ambassadors. They are fans of Alberta and they're fans of the Edmonton region. And I think we enhanced that relationship dramatically. So hopefully things will come from that meeting in the future, and I'll keep council apprised of anything that does come of it. So with that, seeing no further business before council this evening, we are adjourned at 8:16. Thank you and enjoy your evening.